Hi YouTube, Craig here, and today I'm taking a look at the Agfa Clack. The Clack was produced between 1954 and 1965. It's a simple box-like camera that produces 6x9 centimeter negatives on 120 roll film. It has a built-in close-up lens and a yellow filter. But I don't really care about those, because to me, the Clack is the perfect camera to convert to pinhole. So in this video, I plan to demonstrate how I take this camera and convert it to this camera. Here's my take on the Agfa Clack pinhole conversion. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to want to do is remove the lens and shutter assembly. You'll see that there's a screw here at the bottom. This is holding this retaining ring that holds what I call the beauty ring or the face ring of this lens. So let's take a small screwdriver, remove the screw, which will allow you to take this retaining ring off. So now this front assembly just unscrews, comes right off. It's nothing but a piece of plastic that, like I said, beauty ring. The lens itself is held in place by a single screw here. Removing this screw will allow you to just pull the entire lens assembly off. We'll set that aside. Next is the shutter assembly. Here is that yellow built-in filter and close-up filter. Again, we won't be utilizing these, but we need to get this off. So it's held on by two screws, one here on top and one down below. With those two screws removed, we can pull the entire shutter assembly off. But you will notice, because this camera utilizes a flash, there's going to be some wires attached here. Well, we're not going to utilize the flash for this, so those can simply be cut off. I'll clean up these wires a little bit more later on, but that gets the assembly. Don't get rid of this, because we'll use this as a template to cut out our new pinhole housing. So there you've got it. Now you've got the camera with the lens and shutter assembly removed. Now I've seen a number of Clack pinhole conversions, and they all function properly. Some utilize the shutter assembly, some only go as far as this and then put a pinhole on the front of it. But what I was after was something that was a little more streamlined and as compact as possible. I have stopped at this point before, utilizing the beauty ring here, put it in, fixing a filter ring to it, putting the pinhole here on the opening, and it works just fine. But like I said, I wanted to make mine streamlined. So you can take a look here how far this protrudes compared to my conversion. What you see on the front here is the lens cap that I use for a shutter and a 52 millimeter filter ring. And that's it. So, my next step, what I do when I'm converting these, is I want to cut away as much of this material as possible, all the unnecessary material. And I'm going to do that with a Dremel tool. But I got to get it off the camera first. So to remove this front piece here, we got to first take the camera apart, which is done by twisting this knob on the bottom, and it allows you to slide the camera into two pieces. So we'll take the bottom half, we'll set it aside because we're not going to need it right now. This front housing is held on by 2 screws. One, you might see, is right up top here, and the other one is kind of hard to get to because it's behind this plate. The easy way to get to it is to start by removing this bottom piece of the camera, which is held on by 4 screws. Here, 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 and here. So let's start by doing that. We'll take these 4 screws off, and I'll show you how that gives us access. One thing you'll notice here while I'm unscrewing these screws is one of the reasons why I think this is a perfect camera to convert to pinhole. The Clack was designed with a curved film plane. It made for sharper images and inexpensive to create. If you notice here, the film plane is curved. I like this for pinhole photography because it makes it so that the film, every part of the film, is the same distance or close enough to the pinhole, to the light source. So you don't get a lot of fall off. So even with this 6x9 negative, you get a very even exposure across the negative. So here we've removed the screws, and that takes off, let that spool drop out of there, takes off the bottom half of the camera there. So we'll set that aside, and now you can see the 2 screws, one here and one up here, which is kind of hard for you to see. That's what holds on this front piece. So I'm going to go ahead and take those off. Set these screws aside. And now you will see, again, here are those wires for the flash. Now I will cut these up real high and tight because we're not going to use them anymore, so I'll get those cut up in a little while. So here we have the front assembly, a little bit dirty here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Dremel tool and I'm going to cut it down to where it's even with this plane here. There's almost a line here. If you look closely, you can see there's almost a line right there. And that's what I'm going to take it down to. So I'm going to go do that and come back and take a look at that. Just in case some of you might not be clear on what it is I'm doing with my Dremel, is I'm just removing, as you can see, I've taken some of the material off. I'm just removing material, and I'm going to take it down to about this line here that you can see. And if you're not familiar, this is a Dremel tool, and this is the tip I'm using. It's just a little round piece of sandpaper, basically. It's going to get a little bit loud, but I'll show you how easy it is to take this material off. One thing to keep in mind when doing this material is basically melting away, so it is very hot when it comes off. So I highly recommend that you wear some kind of protection from the skin I generally don't, but I would recommend that you do. Definitely wear eye protection because this stuff gets everywhere. Now I'm not going to bore you with showing you how I take it all the way down, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this piece off and then come back. Okay, so I got most of the material off, but before I go any further, I want to show you where I am here. So I've taken off all the material and made it flush to about where I want it to be. The way I do my conversion, I've gone ahead and pulled the front piece off of my already finished conversion, is I create a mount for the pinhole, kind of a pinhole housing here. And I do this out of an old clipboard, which I'll show you a little bit later in the video. But basically it's two pieces of this clipboard material with a pinhole sandwiched in between. And then I have this pinhole housing set down inside of the rest of the housing. In order to do that, I have to get rid of this cone section. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove this with the Dremel. But the tricky part is these screw mount pillars here, they also have to be removed. So it's a little bit tricky to get in there and get it. It takes a little while because you don't want to interfere with these mounts here, because this is how the camera mounts, or rather how the front assembly mounts to the camera. So I'm going to go ahead, take the Dremel, I'm going to remove this cone section, and I'm going to remove these pillars. But I wanted to show you what it looked like before I do that and where I am at the process. Okay, let's do that, and I'll come back. Okay, I've taken down as much material as I want now. I've taken the pillars down, and I'm left with just the mounting screws that are necessary to attach it to the camera itself. This opening here is perfect for a 46 to 52 step-up ring. It sits right down inside of it. It's slightly loose, but you're going to adhere it anyway, but it's just perfect right inside of there. This is what I use on the front, and it allows me to use not only filters if I wanted to, but also a lens cap that can double as the shutter. Now for the pinhole itself, I make this little housing here. It's a couple of pieces of plastic that I have the pinhole sandwiched in between. I've got some cutouts here that correspond with these mounting screws here, so that when I set it in, it sits nice and flush inside. Then I can take the step-up ring, adhere that on there, and now you've got a nice clean pinhole housing with the ring that you can use filters and the lens cap for. So as far as the pinhole housing itself, I make this out of plastic, and what I use is just an old plastic clipboard. I cut a piece out of the clipboard. I take, remember that shutter assembly for the Clack, I take everything off of it, and I end up with a piece like this that I can use as a template to mark the circle and mark the center. Once I do that, then I grind down the material with my Dremel, and I turn it into this piece here. This is the front of the camera, so this is going to be this portion of it. I also make a back portion of it because I want to sandwich the pinhole in between so it's in place. This back portion you'll see has cutout notches in it. Those notches correspond to the mounting screws that are inside the housing here. So the first piece sits down nice and flush with everything. The pinhole goes on, the front piece goes on. Of course I do that all separate. I make this one solid unit as you see here. The pinholes I use a laser drilled 0.3 millimeter. I've used 0.4 and 0.3. I think the images come out a little bit sharper with the 0.3, so that's what I do with all of my Clack conversions now. Basically, I will center up the pinhole. I will adhere it to the back portion. Then I take the front portion and I adhere that all together to create this little pinhole housing. And like I said, this drops down flush into the housing, I will adhere it here, and I will take the ring and I will also adhere the ring as well. Okay, before I finish up the pinhole assembly, I'm going to do a little bit of house cleaning here. Remember these flash wires that I said we will clean up later? We don't really need them. You can just like to pull them tight there, and then just take some dikes and clip them off. So those we don't need at all. Whatever's left, take a little screwdriver, tuck them away. They are not necessary. One other thing I do, excuse me, before I continue, is I paint the inside of the camera flat black. Now I don't know if it makes a difference. I just do it because if you notice how shiny this Bakelite plastic is, let's grab my other one here, compared to what it looks like once I painted it flat black. Longer exposures of pinhole, you could get some light bouncing around inside, so I take the effort to go ahead and mask it off and paint everything on the inside black. I also paint this front piece black. You can see the difference here, the reflection of the light of the one I just modified and one that I've modified in the past. It's a small thing, but it may or may not make a difference, but I think it does. So I take the trouble to do it. Okay, now we've got the pinhole assembly all put together. It's been painted. I've also painted the inside of all the internals here. Now it's just a matter of reassembling the camera. You need to put the front piece on first so that you can have access to this lower screw. If you put this bottom piece on first, cuts off that access. You can still do it, but you're going to be scraping up a little bit of the inside of the camera. If you're interested in seeing some pictures taken with one of my modifications, you can take a look at my Flickr page. It's callencoss. That's CALLENCOSS. callencoss. You can look me up on Flickr. Go to the album that has the Agfa Clack pinhole. And there you go. How to take an Agfa Clack and turn it into an Agfa Clack pinhole camera. I'm going to be selling both of these two cameras. This one I've been shooting with for a while. This is the one we just did in this video. I'm going to be putting them up on eBay soon. I currently live in Germany, but I'm making a trip back to the States here next month. Excuse me, and I'll be bringing them with me, putting them up on eBay before that. I'm going to sell them for $45 plus about $10 shipping, depending on what it comes out to for priority mail. So keep an eye out for that. If you're interested, let me know in the comments below. if you have any questions about how I go about doing this, if I didn't make anything clear, because I don't normally make these types of videos, if you have any questions, put them down below and I will try to answer them as best I can. One last thing before I finish up. The design of the clack has a lever on the bottom here. You twist, separate the two halves, that's how you load your film. It also doubles as the tripod mount. Now the tripod plates that I have, when I screw it into here, it feels a little unstable because it has all this open area here. So what I did is I made a base plate for the camera. I cut it to size, fits the bottom, then I can put my tripod plate on here, mount it to my tripod, and it works great. Something to consider if you're having a little bit trouble keeping it stable on a tripod. If you have any questions about anything in this video, if I didn't make something clear enough, because I don't normally make these types of videos, please put a comment down below and I will do my best to answer them. I hope you enjoyed the video.